Hey everyone, thanks for learning to play games. My name is Lance, and in today's video I'm going to teach you how to play Enchanters. This is a game by Mythic Games. It is a 2 to 4 player game that takes roughly 45 minutes to an hour and a half to play, and is a competitive game where players are competing with each other to have the most glory at the end of the game. So in this video I'm going to teach you how to play, starting with components, setup, player turns, and endgame conditions. In this video I'll also be using the deluxe version, as that is what I have in this box, but I will try to cover some of the other version if you don't have the deluxe version, as this is going to include obviously the neoprene mats and plastic tokens. But you can play the game without those, and all of those components are also included in the deluxe version. So as always, if you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider that like button, subscribe to my channel. It's ways you can support channels like mine so we can continue to grow and be able to produce this content. If you want to stay updated on all my videos, just consider that bell so you get notifications anytime I release new stuff. So let's head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. The first component I want to start with are the kingdom decks, and there are going to be 8 of these included in the base game. These will include the bandits, barbarians, cultists, drakons, gnolls, goblins, undead, and unicorns. Each one of these decks is going to contain 25 cards and will be made up of 4 different types of cards, including items, enchantments, monsters, and dragons. Each one of these decks will also have a reference in the back of the book that is going to give you some flavor text on it and a basic strategy for what to expect in that deck and how to handle it. Each kingdom deck is going to have its own color scheme and icon on the back of the cards. Some of the cards are also going to have a number 2 in the bottom, and this is going to be used for setup. Depending upon the number of players and other game modes, some of the games will require you to remove all of the cards that do not have a number 2 on them and return them back to the game box. And I'll cover this more during setup a little bit later in the video. Then, like I said before, each one of these decks is going to be comprised of 4 different types of cards: items, enchantments, monsters, and dragons. Starting with the items and enchantments, each of these cards is going to list an image of that item or enchantment, along with its name and the icon in the corner. For items, their icon is going to be on the left, and enchantments, theirs is going to be on the right. Each of these cards will also give you bonuses to your attack and defensive stats that will be calculated anytime you get a new item or enchantment. Some of the icons are going to be on the bottom of the card, where others will be on the top, which means that if you cover those up, then they will no longer count and you'll have to readjust your offense and defense. And again, I'll cover this a little bit later in the video. Each of these icons will also list a number next to it, which is the number of points you're going to increase your offense or defense by. Underneath that is going to be an ability with some of the cards that you can activate if it's the top card. For example, with the Saver, you can pay 1 crystal, and this is going to give you +3 attack for this particular attack action. And then finally, some of them will also list victory points that you can gain at the end of the game by meeting the needs of requirements of that particular victory condition. Moving over, then we have monsters, and these are going to have icons on the top, which are going to denote the monster's hit points and its attack value. And again, I'll go over this more during that step. Monsters will also give some bonuses sometimes when defeating them. For example, with this one, as soon as you defeat this monster and take it, you're going to take 3 crystals, and then other players are going to lose a crystal. And again, monsters may give you victory points at the end of the game, or ways of gaining victory points at the end of the game. Finally, dragons are the most powerful creatures out there, and as you can see, their stats are quite a bit better, and they will also have conditions that are going to be triggered either when you defeat them or under other circumstances, and will grant quite a bit of victory points. During setup, you're going to randomly select one of the village cards used in your game. Each of these cards will have an image of that village along with its name and village icon. Underneath that are 3 different ways that you're going to be using this village throughout the game. On the left-hand side is going to show you the multi-action for this, and most of the time this is going to be a way to purchase additional attack power. For example, with Dwarfberg, this one you can pay 2 crystals to gain +1 attack for this attack action. And this can be done multiple times, so you can pay more than that, so you could pay 4 to get 2 attack or 6 to get 3 attack. Then in the middle of the card is going to be the different options for a rest action when you perform that. So for example, again with Dwarfsburg, when I rest, I could take 1 crystal for each defense that I have, or I could take 3 crystals, or I could choose to heal 1 health. And each one of the villages is going to grant different rest abilities. Finally, on the right-hand side of each village is going to list an additional way to gain victory points at the end of the game. With the Dwarfsburg, you can gain 1 victory point for each defense you have, Or for Hateville, you're going to gain 1 victory point for every 2 monsters you've defeated. And each one, again, is going to be different. You're also going to be drawing an Overlord card during setup randomly. Each one of the Overlord cards is going to list the name of that Overlord at the bottom of the card, and then each Overlord is also going to have their health and attack stats at the top of their card. On the other side, each Overlord card is going to have 3 sections. The first is the invasion, and anytime a monster or dragon is placed into the graveyard after you take a rest action, then you have to perform the listed action. So for example, with this Overlord, when a monster goes in there, you're going to transfer 1 wound to another player, or when a dragon goes in there, then all players are going to take 2 wounds. Next, we have the challenge. So during a player's turn, they can choose to challenge an Overlord instead of doing one of their other actions, and this is going to outline how you do that. So with this particular Overlord, you can challenge him, and you must pay 2 crystals to fight the Overlord. During setup, you're going to place a number of reward tokens on your Overlord, depending upon the number of players. And if you have the deluxe version of the game, you'll have the plastic tokens, otherwise you'll have the cardboard ones. If you're able to defeat the Overlord as any other monster, then you'll gain one of these reward tokens. And then at the bottom of his card, it's going to list what you get for that reward. So with this one, each reward token is going to give that player +1 attack and defense, and then you're also going to get to immediately transfer 1 of your wounds to another player. And as you can see, each one of the Overlords is a little bit different, with some of them giving you victory points into the game, and so on and so forth. Once an Overlord is out of reward tokens and that Overlord has been defeated, which means that the invasion results do not apply anymore. So once a Overlord is defeated, if a monster or a dragon goes into the graveyard, then you'll no longer resolve these effects. So there's a couple of important things I want to mention again before getting into the setup. So first off, again, I am using the deluxe version, so I will have a neoprene mat that I'll be using for setup, as well as the player boards are going to be neoprene mats. If you don't have the deluxe version, I'll try to throw up some images to help you along as well, but basically everything works the same way. So that being said, the other thing is that you will receive a quick reference guide for all of the different tokens, what they will represent in the plastic versions of those tokens versus the cardboard. And you can use either one however you want to do it. So from there, let's go ahead and talk about the main game board itself. So with Enchanters, there's a number of variants and expansions that have come with this, especially again if you have the deluxe version. And so they've included some of that on the board so that you can set it up and use whatever you want to. So in this video, I'm going to start off by just showing you the base game, and then towards the end of the video, I'll start going into some of the expansions and how those work and how you add those in. So if you're just interested in getting into the game, you'll just have to watch this first part, and then you can come back later and watch the rest if you want to, or you can watch the rest and see what you want to add in right away. So first, with that being said and out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the main game board. So you're going to have your adventure deck and your 6 spaces that are going to always be used, and I'll show you how to set this up in a minute. And then you'll have your space for your village card. Now, if this is your first game, it is recommended that you just use a village card and the adventure deck and the track, the journey track. So if you just want to get into the game, this is all you will need to set up. If you want, after your first couple games, then you're also going to include an Overlord. And then you also will have the graveyard, and you will not be using the wound deck. This is a variant that you can add on through one of the expansions, as well as the quests. So you can kind of ignore those 2 spots there. So first, let's go ahead and move into character player setup. So each player is going to receive a mat. Again, these are the deluxe mats. Otherwise, if you don't have the deluxe version, you can check this image here, and this will show you what to set up. Then each player is going to receive trackers for their defense and offense. You can put those on the top of their boards initially. Each player is also going to receive a help card, which is a quick reference card. And then you can start by randomly choose, or each player is going to choose a kingdom deck as well. Now, in a 2-player game, as I'm setting up for here, you are going to choose 2 kingdom decks per player, so you'll have 4 kingdom decks. In each deck, you're going to only use the cards with the number 2 in the bottom corner of the card. So each one of my decks will only have 13 cards in it that are the number 2s. From there, then you go ahead and shuffle up those decks. So once you have the deck good and shuffled up, then you are going to take a number of enchantments and artifact cards from the bottom of the deck based on the number of players. So you can see here on this chart that based on the number of players, I'm going to be playing 2. I'm going to take 6 cards from the bottom of the deck. So I'm going to look through and take those out now. So there's 3. Any monsters or dragons that you find, you're just going to set to the side. There's 4, 5, and 6. And then you can just place those right back on the bottom of that deck and place that on the adventure deck track. And then you'll go ahead and place these cards on top of there. From there, then you're going to place them out on each one of the slots on the journey track. Then you're also going to select a village. For your first game, they recommend using the Dwarfburg. So I'll place that out. And then if you're going to use an Overlord, the recommended one is going to be Lord Volgan. So I'm going to place him up here. And then again, with the Overlords, you're going to place a number of ward tokens out, 1 per player. So I'm going to go ahead and place 2 of those on his character. Each player is also going to receive 5 crystals. So we're going to place out our crystals and wound markers. And then each player is going to receive 5. Enchanters is played over an undefined number of rounds. During each round, each player will get to take a turn, performing one of the major actions during that turn. This is going to continue until all the cards are removed from the adventure deck and the journey track. At that point, then the game is over and the players will total up their glory, and whoever has the most points will be the winner of the game. All right, now we're ready to move into the game. So again, you'll choose your starting player, and I'm going to have my player over here be the starting player. So during each player's turn, that player must perform 1 major action out of a selection of 2 major actions, unless you're including Overlords, in which case then there'll be an additional major action that a player can take. These actions are Journey, Rest, or with the Overlord, Challenge. I'm going to take you through each one of these in more detail so you know how these all work. The first action I'm going to look at is a journey action. This is going to allow you to select one of the cards on the journey track to gain if it's an item or enchantment, or you're going to have to enter into combat if it is a monster or a dragon. So first off, let's go ahead and start by looking at the journey track. So the first card that is closest to the village is always going to be free, and then every card after that is going to cost 1 additional crystal. So the first card will cost 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then 5. So the farther up you go on that track, the more expensive it is, and if you cannot pay the cost of it, then you cannot gain that card. So going into my player's turn, let's go ahead and say that my player wants to gain one of these cards. And he likes the pickaxe, so he must spend 1 crystal, and then he can gain the pickaxe. Now this is an item as listed on its icon on the side, so it's going to be placed in the stack of item cards that player has. This is his first card, so he'll go right on the center of that stack, and then he immediately is going to reference that card and increase his stats based on the stats that are on that card and every other card that he has with icons showing. So right now he's going to have 1 attack and 1 defense from this card. Once he's done with that, then all the rest of the cards on that track are going to slide down and a new card is going to come out. Now we have a monster at the ends there. So once he's done with that, then he can perform any minor actions that he wants to during his turn. Some cards can be discarded for an effect, or you can use the multi-action if you're performing a combat, which I'm going to cover in a second. So from there, once that is done, then it'll move over to the next player to take their turn, and this is going to go bouncing back and forth again until the game is over. So with this player, let's go ahead and look at another example of this. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to take the crown. So this one will just go into my item slot, and then these are going to move down. New card will come out. So we have a backpack, and then it's going to move back over to the first player to go. So that player is going to select another card. I am going to spend 1 crystal again, and I'm going to gain the chainmail. So this is also an item. So this must go in the item slot, and it's going to be stacked on top of the previous item all the way up to the line that is shown there, as you can see here. So this will go over, covering up the top part of that card. So now I can no longer use this card's ability that is listed here unless I can get rid of this card. And I'm also going to lose the +1 attack. So with this card covering up, now I have to readjust my stats. So my attack is now 0, but I do have 3 defense. Again, it'll bounce back over to my other player once I slide all these down and add a new card, as you're always going to end your turn with 6 cards on the field. So then this player is going to spend 2 crystals, and I'll pick up this gold bar of alchemy. Again, I'm going to readjust. So I'll get 2 attack from that one, and I will slide down again. Okay, so at this point, let's go ahead and talk about fighting monsters and dragons. So again, if I choose to select a card on the journey track that is a monster or dragon, I must first be able to pay the cost of that card. And then I also have to be able to defeat that monster. So each monster has a number of hit points, as you can see here on the top left-hand side of the card. If you don't have enough attack power to defeat that monster, you can take minor actions to purchase the multi-action ability on the village card. So for this one, it says that I can pay 2 crystals, and for each 2 crystals I pay, I get +1 attack that's only going to be applied during this turn. So I could, if I had 6 crystals, I could spend those to get 3 attack, which I don't. So at this point, I cannot attack the unicorn, as he is just too high for my player. So instead, I think I'm going to gain this card of fire. Again, I will slide these down and move over to my other player to go, who is going to... I also get, at the beginning of my turn, I get to gain a crystal from my alchemy bar. And I think I'm going to go ahead and discard my crown, as this one has an ability. It says I can discard this card to gain 7 crystals. So anytime you discard a card, it's going to go into the graveyard. Now that will not trigger the Overlord's effect, as his effect is only when a card is removed from the journey track and placed in there. So then I'll gain 7 crystals. So let's go ahead and do that. And then I am going to... What do I want to gain? I will gain the backpack. So that's going to cost me 2. This is going to go here. And then again, I'll readjust. So I'm going to have 1 defense and 3 attack now. All right, so then it'll go here. So back to my player over here to go. I am going to fight the unicorn. I think I forgot to adjust my combat gauge there. So I'm going to spend the 1 crystal to fight the unicorn. And then I'm going to trigger my Of Fire's ability. This is going to let me pay 2 crystals. And then this is going to add +1 attack for each defense that I have. So I'm going to add 3 to my base attack. So I'll have 4, which is enough to defeat the unicorn. Now, once you deal enough damage to a monster to defeat it, it is also going to attack you back with its attack value. You are going to subtract your defense from it, so if there's any leftover attack value left, then you're going to take a number of wounds based on whatever is left over. So with the unicorn here, I was able to defeat it, but it is going to attack me back for 1, but I do have 3 defense, so it is not going to do any wounds to me. But if I was attacking the dragon, for example, the dragon would hit me back for 8 damage, so I would subtract 3 from that, so the dragon would do 5 damage to me, and then I would collect his card. And then again, you're going to resolve the effect on the bottom of the card if there is one. So for example, the unicorn, once I defeat it and add it to my area, I get to heal 3 wounds. Now I don't have any wounds at this point, so it's not going to matter. But other monsters will have other effects, such as having different crystals or causing other players to take wounds and all kinds of other things. So now that we've covered the first major action, let's go ahead and move into the rest action. So with this action, when a player chooses to perform the major rest action, they are going to select one of the abilities on the village or on a card that they have to gain for that rest action. So on the Dwarfsburg village, as you can see here, when I rest, I can take a crystal for each defense, which I'd only gain 1, or I could choose to rest and gain 3 crystals, or I could choose to rest and gain 1 health, so I could remove a health token that I've taken damage on. I also have the backpack, which lets me use, when I rest, I can gain 5 crystals. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with this player and gain 5 crystals. Add those to my supply. And then once I've completed that, then the card that is closest to the village is going to be discarded to the graveyard. If it is a monster or a dragon, you're also going to have to reference your Overlord's card and it'll have an effect. So if this was a monster, then I could transfer 1 wound to another player, or if it was a dragon, then all players are going to have to take 2 wounds. Finally, the cards on the track are going to slide over again towards the village and a new card will come out. From there, it'll move back over to the other player to take their turn. So at this point, I went ahead and jumped forward a couple rounds to show you the last kind of major action you can perform if you're using an Overlord and they still have reward tokens left on their card. So this action is the challenge, and in order to do this, your player is going to announce that they're going to challenge the Overlord and then check on the challenge section of the Overlord's card. So as you can see here, to use challenge, you must pay 2 crystals and then you can fight the Overlord. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and pay the 2 crystals. Then I'm going to fight the Overlord just like any other monster. So he has 5 health, and right now I only have 2 attacks, so I'm not going to be successful in that. But I have the Scimitar, so that is going to let me pay 1 crystal to gain 3 attack power. So that'll bring me up to 5. Then the Overlord is going to attack me back for 5, and I have 5 defense, so I don't take any damage there. So I will claim a reward token for defeating the Overlord in this challenge. From there, at the bottom of his card, it's going to list what I get for that. So each reward token I have is going to get me 1 attack and 1 defense. And then I also get to transfer one of my wounds to another player. So I'm going to go ahead and give this player one of my wounds. And again, make sure that you're always recalculating your attack and defense, as each time you add a card or do different things, it's going to potentially change that. So you want to make sure that you're using the proper numbers. Once all of the Overlord's reward tokens have been removed, that Overlord has been defeated and his invasion part will not take effect anymore. So anytime for the rest of the game a monster or dragon comes into the graveyard, you will not resolve the effects on the Overlord's card. Now, there is no limit to the number of wounds a player can take. Players are never eliminated from the game. Instead, at the end of the game, when totaling up glory points, each wound that you have is going to reduce your number of glory by 1. So you'll have to subtract those at the end of the game based on how many you've taken throughout the game. Now, once all the cards are out of the adventure deck and out of the journey track, the game is over and the players are going to do a final scoring round to determine who has the most glory and will be the winner of the game. In order to carry this out, each player is going to total up all the glory on all of their monsters and any of the items or enchantments that they have. So let's go ahead and start with this player over here first. So this player has 1 glory for that item there. And then let's go through his monsters. So goblins will get him 2. He gets 1 glory for each 5 crystals that he has. So he has 1 there. So that's going to be 4 and 5. Another goblin for 6, 7. Another goblin 8, 9. And the cultists will give him 10. There's 11, 12. 17 and 20 points. Then the village is going to give him 1 point for each defense that he has. So that's going to bring him up to 24. And then he has to subtract a number of points based on the number of wounds he has. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's back down to 19. So that'll take care of that player's turn. And then if the Overlord gives you any victory points, you want to check that as well, which this Overlord does not. So moving over to the other player now, this player is going to again total up his glory points. He has 1 there. And then let's go through his cards. He has 1 for each defense. He has 10 right now, so that's 11 already. 22, 27, 28, 29, 38, 39, and then he is going to get 10 points for that again, so that's 49, and then we're going to subtract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that'll bring him down to 43. So our player over here did extremely well and was able to defeat the first player. So at this point, that will take care of the core game. You have everything you need to know to go ahead and play. If you want to stick around, I am going to be covering the expansions after this. But if not, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video and leave me feedback on that. I do really appreciate it, taking into account everything you say to make the best possible videos. Until next time, I'll see you later. But for those of you who want to stick around, let's go ahead and jump into the first expansion for this game that's included in the deluxe version. The Overlords expansion is going to double the amount of kingdom decks that you have to 16. This will add 8 new decks, which are going to include the Angels, Dark Elves, Demons, Fairies, Golems, Mages, Slime, and Troglodytes. Each one of these decks, again, will have its own section in the rulebook that is going to outline how that deck works and any important strategies for that deck. This expansion also includes 1 new feature, which is the Wound deck. This can be added to any of your games, and this is going to add an additional layer to wounds. When a player receives 10 or more wounds, they'll convert those into one of the wound cards by drawing the top 2 cards, looking at them, and choosing one of them to gain. Each one of these cards will have a name and will provide the players with potential victory points into the game, as well as other negative effects. For example, with allergy, you cannot fight dragons. Or with this one, it's going to give you a +1 attack, but it's also going to decrease your armor by 1. These cards are also going to count as -10 points into the game, and you will be able to get rid of these in the game as you heal wounds, and I'll go over that in a minute. Alright, so then the last thing with this expansion is to talk about how the wound deck works. So with this one, if you do not have the deluxe version, you'll have a card you can place down as a placeholder to place that during setup. Otherwise, if you have the deluxe version, I'll place that off to the side. You can shuffle up your deck of wound cards and then place them out in the wound deck slot, and then you're ready to go. Now, throughout the game, as players take wounds, this is going to add one additional layer to that. So once a player has taken 10 wounds, so our player over here has 8 wounds right now, once they take 10 wounds, then something's going to happen. So let's go ahead and say that it's this player's turn, and the player chooses to fight the bandit here. So he has to do 2 wounds to it, and he has to pay the cost, and he can do 2 wounds to it. Then it's going to attack him back for 3. He has no defense right now, so he's going to take 3 wounds. So we'll go ahead and add those to his area. And at this point, now he has 11 wounds that he's taken. So anytime you have 10 or more wounds, you're going to clear 10 of those wounds and add those back to the supply. And then you're going to draw 2 wound cards from the wound card deck. You're going to go ahead and look at those cards and choose one of them to keep. So I have Punctured Lung. This one's going to give me 2 victory points. And I cannot use attack and defense on the top section of a item card, so I could not use this for that one, so that's bad. And then I have Panic Attacks. This one's giving me 2 victory points, and I cannot fight monsters with a attack greater than 5. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that one for now, as that is a little less punishing than the Punctured Lung. This one can be discarded off to the side, and now at this point, this is going to count as -10 points into the game, and this is going to have this lasting effect that's going to affect the rest of this player's game until they get rid of it. So there are going to be ways of getting rid of this. First off, anytime you heal, you must heal actual tokens first. And then once you run out of tokens, then you're going to remove the card. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that we end up defeating this unicorn. It lets me heal 3 wounds after defeating it. So then I would heal 3, I would remove this one, which brings me down to just the card. And then I would be able to heal this. I'll remove the card, discarding it to the discard pile, and then gaining a number of wounds that I have left. So that was 3 heals, so I would get 8 wounds instead of the 11 that I have at this point. Now, if any point in time that I go back over 10, I would redraw new wound cards and select one again. And this again happens, so if I had 20 wounds, again, I would have to discard 10 of those to gain another wound card. So you can have any number of wound cards as well. The Odyssey expansion is going to add 6 new kingdom decks: Centaurs, Gladiators, Harpies, Medusa, Mermaids, and Mummies. This expansion also includes 4 other decks of cards that you can choose to add to your games to provide more variety. The first one are the banner cards, and these are going to replace your item card slot. With the deluxe version, you'll simply place the card on here, and in the regular version, you'll replace your fist with one of these cards. Each one of these cards will provide a different ability or different effect for gaining victory points or other effects that players can use throughout the game. The next deck are the class cards, and this deck is going to be placed on the enchantment cards section, or if you're not using the deluxe version, on the enchanting card, we'll replace that. Each one of these again will provide different benefits, such as adding additional attack or defense and giving you other options or minor actions that you can take throughout your turn. The third deck of cards are the AI cards, and this is going to convert your game into a fully cooperative game where you're going to choose one of the new bosses to go up against and add their micro deck into the core deck of AI cards. And I'm not going to cover the AI experience in this, as that is going to be a separate video probably if there's enough interest for it. So if you're looking for the fully cooperative video, please let me know in the comments down below if that's something you would like to see. Other than that, with these decks, each turn the player is going to reveal one of these and carry out the effects of it based on the number of hit points that boss currently has, and then they'll carry out the effect of that. And the final deck of cards are the event cards. If you choose to add this deck to your game, this is going to add a little bit of unpredictability and a little bit more complexity to it. This deck is going to be added to the adventure cards, and based on the number of players, during setup I'll show you how to add these cards to your game. But these will be added to the adventure deck, and when one of these is revealed, you're going to handle its effects immediately. Each one of these cards will have a name of the card and then the effect. Each one of these effects must be handled immediately as shown on the arrow, and then some of them will be attached to the furthest monster and will provide certain benefits to that monster, or will cause players to discard certain cards, or be attached to other items or effects, and even others will affect overlords or other monsters in different ways. In this expansion, you're going to add 3 new decks, and again, these can be optional. You can choose to add some or all of these decks, but each one of them is actually going to be handled in setup. So the first 2 are the banner and class decks. With these, you'll shuffle them up, and these are going to replace your fist and enchantment cards if you're using the non-deluxe version with the cards. Otherwise, the deluxe version, you're just simply going to place them right on top of the spots on these. In order to do this, during setup, you're going to shuffle up each one of these decks and deal 2 cards to each player. So we'll do that. Then each player will choose which card that they want to have. So I have this one here that gives me 1 victory point for every 3 enemies, and I can discard this card and ignore an ability on this turn. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the null banner. And then let's see my class. I have of miners. I can pay a crystal to bury the top item or enchantment card, or I can discard this card and get the benefits of any rest action. Ooh, I'm going to go with the of miners. Okay, then these would be discarded, and then the other player would do the same thing. And then these are simply going to take the place so you have those abilities for the game. So from there, the other deck that you have is the encounter deck. So this one is going to work a similar way with setup. You're going to shuffle up this deck and then draw 3 cards per player that's playing. So I'm playing with 2 players, so I would draw 6 cards from this deck. And then these cards are going to be randomly inserted into the adventure deck. So let's go ahead and put one here, put one there. And the rulebook advises not to shuffle after placing these. Put one there, and then let's put one up here so I can show you how these work. All right, so those are in there. Then the players will take their turns as normal, so let's just give this player these. And I'll discard that later. All right, so then we'll go ahead and move into it real quick. So let's go ahead and just wrap through a couple of these. Let's go ahead and say this player takes this one here. These slide down, a new one comes out. This player over here will take that one, discarding that. We'll have a new one come out. Back to this player. I will take, let's take this one. And I am not adjusting things, of course. So now I have an encounter or a event card that comes up. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over. This is Disenchantment. So this is going to have all players must discard one of their enchantment cards. So our players are going to have to choose. They only have the one right now, so they're both going to have to discard that one. And then this one would go away. Now some of these cards will be attached to a card in the adventure track, in which case you're simply going to place this card below the other card so that its effects are showing, and then it'll follow that card as it moves along. Now in this situation with this card, it's been resolved and it's going to be discarded. We still have an open spot on the journey track, so we're going to go ahead and reveal another card to place in there, so you always have all the cards on your journey track. And the final new expansion is the East Quest. This expansion is going to add 6 new kingdom decks to the game. These are going to include the Geisha, monks, and Naga, ninjas, pirates, and samurai. There's also a couple of new decks of cards included. The first are the quest cards, and you can choose to add these to your game to provide additional ways or goals that players are working towards throughout the game. Each one of these cards will list the name of that quest and will provide conditions that the player must meet in order to claim this quest during their turn by spending a minor action. Now some of these cards can even be claimed once they are already claimed by other players, and these will denote that at the bottom of the card where you can claim this from other players. Where other quests, once they are claimed, that quest will stay with that player for the rest of the game, and all the quests will provide players with additional victory points into the game or other conditions or things that they can do to work towards. The Automa deck can be added to your game to add a virtual player to it, or you can also download an app which is going to work the same way. At the beginning of each round, you're going to reveal one of these cards, and it's going to tell you which card to take from the adventure deck or adventure track and place that in a brand new market deck. And then there'll be other effects with that as well. The final deck that is included in the game is the Mythic Deck, and unfortunately I do not have this deck. It did not come in my box, so I'll have to reach out to Mythic about that. But these are going to be very difficult monsters that you're going to be adding to your game. Again, this is a variant that you can choose to add, and these will provide certain conditions or effects that are going to impact those particular monsters as they come up in your adventure track. And these are going to, again, be very difficult to handle, so they're going to add a difficulty to your game. And the last expansion to this game is also going to add 3 additional decks. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the Mythic deck, so I can only talk about that one. Basically, with that one, you would shuffle it up and then draw 1 card per player. All the players get to look at these cards, then you'll shuffle them up and place them on the bottom of the adventure deck. That way, then the players know what's coming, and they can kind of prepare for it as they plan and play through the game to help them hopefully beat those super heavily nasty monsters. That's a mouthful. Then we have the automated deck. So this one allows you to add either playing solo, or you can add an additional player to your games. With this one, you'd simply shuffle it up and place the deck off to the side. And then at the beginning of each round, you're going to draw 1 card and resolve its effects. So this one is too far to even bother. This one is going to have us remove this card here in the journey track, as this is going to show the track across the top. And the X card is the one that you're going to take away. This card will be placed in a special market space, and then the players can all choose to take this action during their turn, which this is a rest action, which will allow them to take 2 wounds, and then they can journey to the market to take the top card of that and resolve it. Then again, this would slide down, a new card will come out, and then you would take the player turns as normal. The next deck that we have is the quest deck, and this is going to also be handled during setup. With this deck, you're going to shuffle it up and then draw and place out 4 quests for the game. Each one of these quests will have a minor action that you can complete to gain the benefits of this card. And there will be some cards that you can claim from other players, but those will be specified in the bottom, as I already covered. From there, then the rest of the deck can be returned to the boxes. You won't use them, so you'll have plenty of different quests to give your games variety. Again, if you're not using the deluxe version, you'll simply just place those off to the side where the players can all read them throughout the game. Well, I hope you found this video helpful in learning how to play Enchanters and learning all the different expansions that if you've stuck your way all the way to the end, hopefully you've enjoyed the rest of this as well, and this will allow you to add new different options to your games of Enchanters to keep them fresh and working. Like I said in the comments down below, let me know if you would like to see a full teaching video for the cooperative mode. The rules on that one are a little sticky, so I'm going to have to dig into that a little bit more and hopefully get some answers to some of those questions. But let me know in the comments below if that's something that you would like me to cover. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my videos and leave me feedback on them. I do really appreciate it and take into account everything you say to make the best possible videos. And until next time, I'll see you later.